It all started when I was lying in my backyard, legs open, soaking in the sun, while my friend recorded me for an OnlyFans shoot. "This angle good?" I asked. She laughed. "Oh yeah, they're gonna love this." Then, bang, bang, bang. A fist slammed against my backyard fence. "Excuse me! What do you think you're doing?" I sighed. Here we go. Standing on the other side, arms crossed like she was delivering a death sentence, was Janet, the HOA president from hell. "This is a family neighborhood," she shrieked. I stood grabbing my robe and... "You can't do that here." I raised an eyebrow. "Janet, this is my property. I'll use it however I want." Her lips thinned. "The HOA has standards." "I'm not in the HOA." Her face turned beet red. "What?" I smiled. "Yeah. Good talk?" I turned back to my friend. "Let's keep going." Janet's scream of rage was the last thing I heard before she stormed off. I should have known then. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. I thought Janet's tantrum was the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I found a bright yellow notice taped to my front door. Notice of violation. You are in breach of HOA community standards regarding indecent behavior and unauthorized business activity. Fines may be imposed for noncompliance. I laughed. I wasn't even in the HOA. Just as I snapped a picture, I heard it, the click of a camera. I turned toward the street. There she was, Janet, sitting in her car, taking pictures of my house. She wasn't even subtle about it. When I waved, she sped off like a criminal caught red-handed. I immediately sent the photo of the violation notice to Carl, my lawyer. Me, this woman is insane. Carl, this is the dumbest power trip I've ever seen. Me, can I frame it? Carl, keep it for evidence. She's not done. He was right. I had no idea just how far Janet was about to take this. And next time, she wouldn't just be watching. She'd be on my property. At first, Janet's harassment was just annoying. Then, it got creepy. Over the next few days, I caught her driving past my house at least 5 times. Each time, she slowed down, staring at my yard like I was running a crime ring instead of a legal business. Then, one afternoon, while setting up for another OnlyFans shoot, I heard rustling near my fence. I froze. Who's there? Silence. Then, snap. The sound of a twig breaking. I grabbed my phone and hit record. "Janet, are you seriously hiding in my bushes?" No response, but I saw a flash of leopard print fabric, the same blouse she always wore. I caught her. "This is getting weird, lady." I called out. "If you want a subscription, just ask." More silence, then hurried footsteps retreating. That night, I posted the video. The internet ate it up. "She's literally obsessed with you. HOA just horny over you, apparently. She's mad she can't charge you a Karen tax." I laughed it off, but deep down I knew she wasn't done. She was escalating. And soon, she'd make her next move. I woke up early, stretched, and went to make coffee. That's when I saw it. My backyard gate was wide open. My stomach dropped. I knew for a fact I had locked it the night before. I threw on my robe and rushed outside. The lock was gone. Not broken, not damaged, completely gone. I sprinted inside and checked my security footage. At 3:47 a.m., a shadowy figure approached my gate. They reached into their pocket, fiddled with something, and seconds later, the gate swung open. I zoomed in. Short frame, stiff posture. That same ugly leopard print blouse. It was Janet. She stood there staring into my yard. She didn't enter, she didn't vandalize anything. She just watched. For a full minute, I grabbed my phone and called Carl. "Janet just trespassed into my yard at 3 a.m. He sighed. "She's losing it. File a police report. Now." An officer arrived, took my statement, and reviewed the footage. "You did the right thing reporting this. If she comes back, call us immediately." I wanted to believe that would be the end of it. That maybe she'd finally back off. But I knew better. Janet wasn't finished. She was just getting started. 2 days after the police report, Janet tried a new tactic. This time, it came in the form of a letter taped to my door. I ripped it off and skimmed the contents. Cease and desist order. You are in violation of HOA and city zoning laws due to unauthorized commercial activity. Failure to comply will result in legal action, fines, and possible eviction. I actually laughed. It looked official. Fancy paper, legal jargon. But something was missing. A lawyer's name. She didn't even sign it. I snapped a picture and sent it to Carl. Me. Janet's trying to lawyer me out of existence. Carl. That's adorable. Also, illegal. Me. Can I frame this? Carl. Drop it off at my office first, then frame it. Carl drafted a real cease and desist letter, one with actual legal weight, and had it delivered to Janet's house. Less than an hour later, she was pacing outside, waving the letter around, screaming into her phone. Her meltdown was glorious. She thought she could scare me off with a fake legal threat. Instead, she was the one being warned. And something told me that was about to push her over the edge. After getting a real legal warning, Janet finally cracked. It started with screaming. I was sipping coffee in my backyard when I heard her shrieking from across the street. I will not be threatened in my own neighborhood. I nearly spit out my drink. Neighbors peeked outside, some stepping onto their porches. Janet, completely unaware of how insane she looked, kept ranting. She thinks she can ignore the rules. She thinks she can destroy our community. Then she saw me. Our eyes locked. Her face twisted with rage, and then she marched straight toward my house. I stepped inside, locked the door, and grabbed my phone. Bang, bang, bang. Open this door. You can't do this to me. I hit record. Yeah, that's going to be a no from me. That's when she tried to rip my security camera off the wall. I immediately called the cops. By the time they arrived, Janet was still outside, red-faced and shaking. She tried playing the victim, claiming I was harassing her. Then I showed the officers the footage. They gave her an official trespassing warning. As she stomped back to her house, I could feel it. This wasn't over. Janet was about to get desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. 3 days after the police warning, Janet tried again. This time, it was a formal-looking letter shoved into my mailbox. Mandatory HO hearing notice. You are required to attend an official homeowners association meeting regarding your repeated violations. Failure to appear will result in further action. I laughed. I wasn't even in the HOA. I called Carl. She's trying to drag me into a fake hearing now. He chuckled. You should go, with receipts. I grinned. You want me to humiliate her? Bury her? So I did. The next evening, I walked into the HOA clubhouse with copies of every fake fine, my police report, and security footage. Janet sat at the head of the table looking smug until I pulled out the evidence. I'm not in the HOA. You have no authority over me. But Janet, you've been harassing me for weeks. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Someone muttered, "This isn't what we agreed to discuss." Janet turned red. As I walked out, she stormed past me, muttering angrily under her breath. She knew she had lost this round, but she wasn't done yet. The next morning, I found another yellow notice taped to my door. Final notice of fines due $1,500. I rolled my eyes. I wasn't in the HOA. They had zero authority to fine me. I sent a picture to Carl. Me. She's really doubling down. Carl, I'll handle it. But first, let's have some fun. That night, I posted a video. POV. When your HOA tries to fine you, but you're not even in the HOA. The internet went wild. $1,500? Is she charging you a Karen tax? She's mad she can't evict you from your own house. Not Janet getting ratioed in real life. The next morning, I spotted Janet standing across the street, arms crossed, fuming. She had lost control. And something told me she was about to do something drastic. A few days later, I got a letter from the city, Notice of Community Complaint. We have received reports of potential zoning violations at your property. Please contact our office to resolve this matter. I knew exactly who was behind this. I called the city office. Oh, this case. the clerk said. "We've had multiple complaints, but they all sound like they're from the same person." I smirked. "Does this complaint have any legal standing?" "Nope." I hung up and texted Carl. "Me. She filed fake reports with the city." Carl. "She's desperate. Time to hit back." Janet thought she could weaponize the city against me. Instead, she had just built my case against her. And now it was my turn to go on the attack. The moment I got off the phone with Carl, I posted everything. Screenshots of the fake fines, the city notice, even my call with the clerk. The caption? "When your HOA Karen tries to get you evicted and fails miserably." It blew up. "She's losing this war so badly. HOA harassing one adult. Janet, please get a hobby." Then someone replied all to one of Janet's emails to the HOA. "Janet, please get a hobby." That was all it took. Neighbors turned against her. The HOA board got nervous. And Janet? She lost it. That afternoon, I saw her screaming into her phone in her front yard. When I walked by, she lunged toward me. She stopped herself at the last second, realizing too many people were watching. I smiled. "Something wrong, Janet?" She stormed inside and slammed her door. She was about to do something reckless, and I was ready. 2 nights later, my security camera alert went off. Motion detected, backyard. I checked the footage. Janet standing at my fence at midnight. She reached over, trying to unlatch my gate. I called the cops immediately. By the time they arrived, she was still there. "Ma'am, we got a report of trespassing." Janet straightened. "I was just checking for violations." "Do you own this property?" Silence. "Do you have permission to be here?" Nothing. The officer turned to me. "Would you like to press charges?" I looked at Janet. She was pale, shaking. I smiled. "Not yet." The officer handed her a trespassing warning. She was out of chances, and her final meltdown was coming soon. The next morning, Janet snapped. She hijacked the HOA newsletter and sent out a ranting email. "Our community has been tainted by individuals who refuse to follow the rules. If we don't act now, our neighborhood will fall into chaos and disorder." She never said my name, but everyone knew who she meant. It backfired spectacularly. One of my neighbors replied all, "Janet, please get a hobby." The responses poured in. Seconded, "Can we vote her out already? She needs therapy." That afternoon, I walked outside and saw her standing in her yard, screaming into her phone. Her face was red, her hands flailing. When she saw me, she took 2 angry steps toward me. Then she stopped. Too many witnesses. I smiled. "Something wrong, Janet?" She spun and slammed her door shut. Her next move would be her last. 2 days later, a letter from my mortgage lender arrived. "We have received multiple complaints regarding violations at your property. Please contact our office immediately." I froze. Janet had filed fake complaints with my lender. She was trying to get me evicted. I called Carl. She just crossed a new line. Carl reached out to my lender and shut it down in minutes. But the real kicker, she'd filed 5 separate reports using fake names. That was fraud. "It's time to sue," Carl said. When Janet got served with the lawsuit, her screech echoed down the street. "She can't do this to me. I'm the HOA president." The door slammed. Janet had played her last card. And now, she was about to lose everything. Janet had spent months trying to ruin me. Fake fines, bogus complaints, even a trespassing charge. But after her attempt to report me to my mortgage lender, she had finally crossed the line into actual fraud. Carl wasted no time. "We're suing her personally." We filed a harassment, defamation, and fraud lawsuit against Janet. Not the HOA, Janet herself. When the process server knocked on her door and handed her the lawsuit, the entire neighborhood heard her reaction. "This is a joke! She can't do this to me. I am the president." That was Janet's favorite line. But now, it meant nothing. The case moved fast. Carl had a mountain of evidence. Fake violation notices. The police report. Footage of Janet trying to rip my security camera off my house. And now, proof she had falsified complaints under fake names. Janet, for the first time, was silent. She didn't show up to the first hearing. Her lawyer tried to settle out of court, but Carl wasn't interested. She needs to pay for this. At the final hearing, the judge tore her apart. You have no authority over the plaintiff. You engaged in harassment, trespassing, and knowingly filed false complaints. Then came the final blow. The judge ruled in my favor. Janet was ordered to pay damages, legal fees, and issued a formal restraining order. She had officially lost everything. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt it. This war was over, and I had won. With the lawsuit settled and the restraining order in place, Janet was officially powerless. But her downfall wasn't over yet. The HOA board had ignored her antics for months, probably hoping she'd fix her mess before it became their problem. But now, Janet had lost a public lawsuit that embarrassed the entire HOA, and homeowners were furious. The first sign that things were shifting came in the form of an email. Special HOA board meeting. Member vote required. Due to recent legal matters and misconduct allegations, an emergency meeting has been scheduled to discuss leadership changes within the HOA. In other words, they were voting Janet out. I had no reason to attend. I wasn't in the HOA, but Carl insisted. You'll want to see this. So I went. The moment I walked into the meeting, every eye turned to me. Not in anger, but in curiosity. Homeowners who had been too afraid to speak up before now had proof that Janet wasn't untouchable. The board wasted no time. A motion has been raised to remove Janet as HOA president, effective immediately. She sat at the front of the room, arms crossed, face pale, and one by one, hands shot into the air. The vote was unanimous. Janet was done. She stormed out without a word. And for the first time since moving in, I felt it. The neighborhood was finally free. Janet had lost the lawsuit. She had lost her HOA presidency. But instead of accepting defeat, she did what petty people do best. One last desperate attempt at revenge. I woke up one morning to a bright red sign staked into my front yard. Warning: this property violates community standards. I burst out laughing. It was cheap plastic, clearly printed at some office store, but the best part? Janet didn't even try to hide who was behind it. Her house was directly across the street, and there she was, standing in her driveway, arms crossed, watching. I walked outside, casually plucked the sign from the ground and held it up. This you, Janet? She smirked. I have no idea what you're talking about. I shrugged. Cool. Just making sure before I add this to the police report. Her smile disappeared. I took the sign inside, texted Carl, and within the hour, the police showed up at Janet's door. I watched as she frantically gestured, trying to play innocent. But it didn't matter. She was already on thin ice with law enforcement, and this stunt just proved she was still harassing me. By the time the officers left, Janet looked defeated. She had no power, no leverage, nothing. And this time, she finally knew it. After her pathetic yard sign stunt, Janet did something I never thought she was capable of. She went silent. No more fake fines. No more lurking in her car. No more midnight trespassing attempts. She was just gone. At first, I didn't trust it. I checked my cameras daily, expecting her to pop up with another ridiculous scheme. But days turned into weeks, and she stayed hidden inside her house. Then, one morning, I noticed something strange. Her car was missing. A few days later, I saw a moving truck in her driveway. I casually walked outside just in time to see Janet supervising the movers, her arms crossed, looking miserable. She was leaving. I couldn't resist. Morning, Janet. Going somewhere? She stiffened but didn't turn around. None of your business? I smirked. Oh, I think it is. Considering you spent months making my life hell. She whipped around, her face red. I hope you're happy. I took a sip of my coffee. Oh, I am very... For once, Janet had nothing to say. She stomped inside, slamming the door behind her. By the end of the week, she was gone. The house sat empty for a while, and for the first time since moving in, the neighborhood felt peaceful. Janet had finally lost, and I had won. With Janet gone, the neighborhood felt completely different. No one was lurking, no one was snapping pictures, and for the first time since moving in, I could actually enjoy my own backyard. Then, the HOA sent me a letter. At first, I thought it was another pointless notice, but when I opened it, I was shocked. Dear homeowner, we would like to formally apologize for any stress or inconvenience caused by the actions of our former HOA president. We acknowledge that her behavior was inappropriate and does not reflect the values of this community. We hope to move forward on better terms and assure you that such incidents will not happen again. Sincerely, the HOA board. I actually had to read it twice. Janet's own board had completely thrown her under the bus. A few days later, one of the board members, Lisa, a middle-aged woman who always seemed uncomfortable around Janet, knocked on my door. I just wanted to say, we should have stepped in sooner. I leaned against the doorframe, raising an eyebrow. Yeah, you should have, she sighed. We let Janet run things for too long. If you ever need anything, let us know. It was too little, too late, but knowing they were scared enough to backtrack, that was satisfying. I didn't need their apology. I had already won. With Janet gone and the HOA scrambling to save face, life in the neighborhood finally felt normal. No more fake fines, no more stalking, no more screaming HOA banshee lurking outside my house. For the first time since moving in, I could fully enjoy my home. And I went back to shooting my content without worrying about Janet peeking through the fence. My OnlyFans thrived, and, ironically, the whole situation had given me a surge in subscribers. I even started making videos talking about the HOA Karen saga. People loved it. Neighbors who once avoided eye contact now stopped to chat. Some even admitted that Janet had made their lives miserable too. She tried to fine me for having a pink door. She reported my car as abandoned while I was sitting in it. She once measured my grass with a ruler. The stories were endless. It turned out I hadn't just won my battle. I had freed the entire neighborhood from Janet's reign of terror. One evening, as I sipped wine on my patio, I looked around my peaceful yard and smiled. For months, Janet had tried to control me. Now, she was gone, and I was still here, living my life, on my terms. Months passed, and Janet was nothing but a bad memory. The HOA had backed off, the neighbors were friendlier, and life was exactly how I had wanted it to be when I moved in. Then, one morning I got a letter in the mail. At first, I assumed it was junk, but when I saw the sender's name, my stomach dropped. Janet. I tore it open, half expecting another empty threat, but instead it was an apology. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted to explain. I let my position as HOA president go to my head. I thought I was protecting the neighborhood, but I was really just controlling people. I was wrong. I've moved out of state, and I'm working on myself. I hope you're doing well. I stared at the letter, waiting for the punchline, but that was it. No threats, no passive-aggressive digs, just an admission of defeat. I wasn't naive enough to think Janet had completely changed. But the fact that she had written this at all, that was unexpected. I folded the letter, tossed it in a drawer, and went on with my day. Janet was gone, the battle was over, and in the end, I hadn't just won, I had outlasted her. And that was the best revenge of all.